Just when I thought I didn't have any news to talk about, I actually said in the last part of the show that I'm like, man, there's not much news going around. You know, outside of Richard Sherman getting cut, I'm not that surprised about that. And people are saying that I'm a little bit crazy for that, but I'm really not shocked that Richard Sherman got cut. I'm just not. I'm not stunned by it. I think that it was a move that, definitely I expected. But this move, I didn't see it coming in terms of Jarvis Landry to the team that acquired him, and that is the Cleveland Browns. NFL.com just reported a breaking news story that the Miami Dolphins have sent wide receiver Jarvis Landry to the Cleveland Browns. The compensation has not been discussed. The picks, reported for draft picks from Ian Rappaport, but that's all we know so far. And let me just speculate, because this is what it's all about. Speculation is what makes sports talk so much fun. If this is anything less than a second-round pick, then it's a steal for the Cleveland Browns. A steal. You heard me right. Jarvis Landry, for anything less than a second-round pick, is a damn steal. So good on Cleveland if that's the case. If they sent a second to Miami for Jarvis Landry, that is fair in my humble estimation. A first for Jarvis Landry is way too much. A second, fair. Anything less than a second is downright just ridiculous. That's a great trade for the Cleveland Browns. Jarvis Landry has been one of the best PPR machines in fantasy football the last few seasons, but talking real football, Jarvis Landry is right up there in terms of receptions, targets. Really had an off year this year, probably due to the fact that Ryan Tannehill was out for the majority of the year this year, all of the season, I should say. Jay Cutler was slinging the leather for the Dolphins this past year, but Jarvis Landry is a high-quality receiver, and I'm looking at the Browns depth chart right now. Josh Gordon, Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, Corey Coleman. You got some weapons on that receiving core, including the tight end Njoku. You got some weapons for whichever quarterback is going to slot themselves at that quarterback position for the Cleveland Browns. You got some nasty weapons on paper that could do some heavy damage. And if they follow the Thomas Take draft model, which is that of going after Saquon Barkley, taking him first overall, that's another weapon. Mixed in with a quarterback at fourth overall, you got yourself a pretty solid offense. They added Kevin Ziegler. They added Joe Thomas on the offensive line. They added Akron, New York native J.C. Treader as their center. They have a decent offense, again, on paper. So, as I take my first swig of Pepsi here, I don't know what it is. Water just doesn't do the trick. I got to have something with some caffeine in it. So, that is big. Miami obviously wanted to franchise tag him so they could trade him, franchise tag him, so they could get something for him. They probably didn't settle for anything less than a second-round pick. But if they did, man, that's a steal for the Cleveland Browns. And they got the money to re-sign Jarvis Landry long-term. This team's got over $108 million in salary cap space. So they got a guy. I want to clap for Cleveland. Clap for Cleveland, people. That was a good trade. And I think that's going to be very interesting. I'm trying to see if I can get Scotty B on here just to ask some questions. Who's in my fantasy league? We'll see if we can get him on here. If not, I don't hold it against anybody. Man, This is the first live breaking news edition of the Thomas Take in quite some time, in terms of Jarvis Landry heading to the Cleveland Browns. That's a huge deal. It's a huge acquisition for the Cleveland Browns. $16 million on the salary cap for the franchise tag, but easily can be absorbed, easily can be extended due to the fact that Cleveland isn't really paying anybody outside of Myles Garrett. So I'm pretty pumped for that. I like this. I love this time of year. I love it. I really do. I love it. I love it. So let's take to Facebook here, where the show is being broadcasted on Facebook as well as GrandstandSportsNetwork.com, the best view in sports, as well as Twitter at Thomas Takeover, and as well as the YouTube channel. So I usually like going live on Facebook too. I usually try to do the best I can in terms of that, because there's a huge viewership base out there for me on the Facebook side of things, but Facebook is just so, I don't know. I think it's kind of jumped the shark a little bit. I think Twitter has taken over officially in terms of my sports app preference. That's pretty much it for me. I put out a poll, people, for the Buffalo Bills fans. Which one of you do you want in Buffalo? Which one do you want Buffalo? I picked these two not because they're my top two, because they are not, but because these are two quarterbacks that are linked to Buffalo the most. Vote now. Baker Mayfield or Josh Rosen. Baker Mayfield clocks in at 58%. Rosen clocks in at 42%. I got 93 votes, and the poll ends tomorrow. You can check that out on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast Facebook page. Chris Fung is on. Chris Fung says, if the Browns are smart, they take Barkley number 1 and draft one of the quarterbacks, though I've heard they're a front office that sticks slavishly to their board, and they apparently have a quarterback at the top of their draft rankings. I really think the quarterback class this year is pretty good, but there's not that much separation between the top-tier guys to the point that you get one of these big three and be happy with it. Knowing the Brownies, they'll draft a quarterback and lose out on the best player in this year's draft in probably the next 2 to 4 years. I agree. I've talked about the Browns taking Barkley number 1 overall. That's my pick. If I'm picking with the first pick overall, I'd take him no matter what, especially after that combine. But the fact that Jarvis Landry was shipped from the Miami Dolphins to the Cleveland Browns shows that maybe, just maybe, this Dorsey guy from the Kansas City Chiefs is actually legit. If he made this trade and only gave up a third and a fifth, or a third and a fourth, or whatever it may be, with the amount of picks that the Browns have, that's not a bad trade. That's a pretty solid trade. I'm fascinated by the fact that the Cleveland Browns have been a main headline in the National Football League for the last 4 or 5 years due to their mediocrity, and only due to their mediocrity. The fact that nobody has jumped to that fascination, when will they turn it around boat. I'm not even a fan of the Cleveland Browns, but I feel like I talk about the Cleveland Browns a lot, especially within the last 3 years. I talk about the Cleveland Browns a lot. And I think it's due to the fact that they have sucked so bad that it's interesting to see how they'll piece this team together. People are fascinated by that. All the Madden junkies out there, all the fantasy football nerds out there like myself, and all the people that are obsessed with football like myself, are fascinated by how the Cleveland Browns will make this happen. And I think that this is a step in the right direction. Jarvis Landry's been one of the better wide receivers the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 years. And, technically he was drafted in 2014. 14, 15, 16, 17, 4 years. Last 4 years. Since his rookie year, he's been a stud. So, question is, which quarterback would they have throwing to him? Is it going to be Kaiser? Is it going to be Mayfield? Is it going to be Rosen? Is it going to be Darnold? Very interesting. Very interesting move, Cleveland. I see you, and I'll be covering you on the My Fantasy Podcast draft show once again. Covered Cleveland, Buffalo, Pittsburgh last year, I'm pretty sure. And I got to get in touch with some of the people in those markets, but definitely going to have more interviews and stuff on the show, as we get closer to the draft. I really like chiming in, just me, uncut, unedited. That's what the podcast, that's like the backbone of the podcast, hence the name, The Thomas Take. But I do like to have guests on the show as well, and we're definitely going to have, we meaning, me. I'm definitely going to have, maybe me and a co-host and a guest. It'll be fun. It'll be a good time. Man, that really shocked me, though. Really did. I didn't see Jarvis Landry going to the Browns, but now that he did, it makes a lot of sense. It really does. I think that this is a power move for Cleveland because they got a guy that is Antonio Brown-esque, shall I say, in terms of the PPR machine that he is, in terms of his ability to separate from a DB, in terms of what he can do for an offense. It's going to be very fun. Well played, Cleveland. You just put everybody on notice. I'm Ryan Thomas. It was the Thomas Take. Jarvis Landry is headed to the Cleveland Browns. Take care, everybody.